Aloha everyone, it's Slavey, your friendly neighborhood Hesher, and welcome to the Hesh Files, a place where I interview musicians about all of the strange and unusual things that they see out on the road. So strap on your best high tops, ease the seat back, and get ready to be a metaphorical fly on the wall because we're going Heshin'. Aloha everyone, and happy St. Paddy's Day from Flatfoot 56 and me. I'm your host, Slavey, and welcome back to the Hesh Files. Seeing as how it's St. Paddy's and all, I thought it would be best to celebrate with some of the finest Celtic punk out there. So today's guest comes all the way from the windy city of Chicago. I've got Tobin Bawinkle from the fabled Flatfoot 56. Welcome to the Hesh Files.
Thanks for having me. This is awesome.
Of course, man. Why don't you give us a little aloha and tell us a little bit about yourself?
Sure. My name's Tobin Bawinkle. I'm from Chicago. Lived here for most of my life. And been playing with Flatfoot for the last 25 years. This is actually our 25 year anniversary this year.
Hell yeah.
It's been a good, fun journey. It's been a lot of stories, a lot of unique experiences being able to do that. So I do that, and I'm also a high school teacher as well on the side. I mean, that's my main gig, and then playing music on the side. So I've been obviously doing the school year a lot.
Really?
Here in Chicago. Yeah. So
I did not know you were a school teacher. What do you teach?
I'm a history teacher.
Nice.
Yeah. It's
nice.
a good time.
Yeah, no, that's great. I loved history.
Oh, good.
Awesome.
That's good.
Awesome. Thank you for taking the time to sit down with me out of your busy work, school, and Flatfoot schedule. Well, quick question before we really dive in here. How are you celebrating St. Paddy's this year? What does Flatfoot 56 do for the green holiday?
Well, usually on the actual day, it's always a roving holiday, so it's never the same day all year round.
Mm-hmm.
And when it's on the weekends, it's usually a lot more fun. But like when it's not, we always play shows around. So we're the home of another very well-known, kind of legendary Celtic punk band, the Tossers, who are from Chicago as well. They're friends of ours, and so they always do a Saturday before St. Patrick's Day show every year. And because we didn't want to compete with them or kind of have this rivalry, going on of shows, we decided to do ours usually around the 8th of March. So we throw our big Reggie's, it's at Reggie's Rock Club in Chicago, our big event there every year. And then usually the weekend of St. Patrick's Day, we do a weekend run up to Milwaukee into Minneapolis and do a bunch of shows up there. So we've been doing that for like the last 3 years. But usually it's for Celtic punk bands, it's kind of like that's your time to pack it full,
Mm-hmm.
And so Flatfoot's had a lot of years of just absolute. I mean, there were some years where we were playing 280 shows a year, and we did that for about 5 or 6 years straight. So we're not nearly as active as we used to be, but we still are. We still get out there and play a lot.
Yeah.
One of the best descriptions I ever heard about being in a band that's going to last a long time is it's kind of like one of those old water pumps where you pump really hard and a little bit of water trickles out, and then as time goes on, it just starts just gushing, and you don't even have to do anything. It just kind of does this up and down.
Mm-hmm.
And every once in a while, you gotta put your hand on the crank and push it up and down a bit more to keep it rolling. But we're kind of at that stage of we've got a lot of fan base built in, people that have been following us for years.
Yeah,
we found that doing those yearly tours, those yearly events, helps things roll. So yeah, the Reggie show's been happening for probably the last 10 years or so.
Wow. Okay.
This year's with Catch 22, the copyrights, Mania. I'm sorry.
Okay.
It's a new name of a band that's been around for a while. They just changed their name, so I had to remember. But they're good guys, so it'll be a good show.
Yeah, no, that sounds like a great lineup, and that's at Reggie's. Okay.
Yeah.
Awesome. Beyond the celebratory punk shows for the Irish guys, what's the true way to celebrate St. Paddy's in Chicago? Like for the locals, not for like the tourists that are gonna go and do all the tourist trap shit, but what's the true Chicago way to celebrate St. Paddy's Day?
Sure. So the thing that Chicago's always known for, and this is more of a touristy thing, is the dyeing of the river green.
Yes.
And that's something that Chicagoans go out to that too. It's not something that's like, who stay away from that. But I think our biggest thing is like the neighborhoods all have their own St. Patrick's Day parades.
Okay.
And the South Side Irish Parade was a legendary one for a really long time. It was down Western, I believe it was Western Avenue, and that was always known as being just the wildest experience. It was a family parade, but it was the kind of thing where people would put porta johns on their front lawns for the crowds, and you'd have 14-year-old kids passed out in the gutter with red Solo cups all around. It kind of turned into an absolute nightmare for the
Yeah.
city. They actually banned it for a few years.
Wow.
So that was kind of the thing to do for a long time. And then now our neighborhood, we live by Midway Airport. It's where we're originally based out of and where we
Okay.
still live. And our neighborhood parade is actually pretty awesome. So that's kind of a neat way to do it. We were supposed to do a show at the end of the parade this year in our neighborhood,
Hmm.
but then we realized we had booked a whole tour out of state. So we were like, crap, we gotta figure this out. So but yeah, that's usually what you do, or you go to your local pub that's kind of got a strong traditional Irish culture and have dinner with your family,
Okay.
listen to some music around. We used to do these shows at the Ballydoyle Irish pubs here in Chicago. We'd play like 3 different pubs in one day.
Wow.
By the end of the day, we had done about 9 hours worth of music. And
Damn.
it was just an absolute, like, you just kept going and going. And every pub was slammed with people.
Oh
It
yeah.
was just a wild time all day long. You did 3 sets for each pub. It was like this wild. And I think we got to the point where like, this is going to burn us out. And so after that, we went to Florida every year for a while, down to St. Augustine to a pub down there that was throwing events. And that was really fun right up till COVID. And then they lost all their shirt on that one. And
Yeah, COVID had that effect on lots of things.
yeah,
Lots of things.
yeah.
Yeah, St. Augustine is a great city. I was there on tour many years ago, and one of the things that I remember from it was I was reading that it's actually one of the most haunted cities in America.
It's fun. There was a place there called the Barley Republic that used to throw a festival every year. We did it for about 3 or 4 years with some guys out in LA,
Okay.
and they used to come. They used to fly out and do a bunch of stuff, and it was really fun. But I was actually I was playing upstairs at the Barley Republic when the city of St. Augustine officially shut down. So as I'm
Wow.
setting up all my gear, the pub basically tells the whole crowd I was playing acoustic for the show
Hmm.
because they had scaled everything back to acoustic because they weren't sure what was going to happen with COVID. And I'm literally plugging my guitar in, and the announcement goes out: no more beer can be sold. You don't have to leave, but no
Oh.
alcohol, no more alcohol when we sold. The city shut us down. And so I kind of went into this like, hey, everybody, buy Reuben sandwiches. I guess like I'm like let's make this go out. It was a very weird. I was there with a guy named Dylan Walsh, and that night we went back to our Airbnb that we were all staying at, and I think we got seafood and just waited for the world to like close up. It was very
Wow.
weird. It was right next to the ocean. It was getting dark, and it was just an eerie feeling of like uncertainty. I'll
Yeah.
never forget it.
Yeah, that's wild. Especially being, yeah, right there by the water too. For some reason, that makes it even more eerie
Yeah. Oh yeah. It
because there's
was.
just
It was.
nothing out there.
Yeah. Just dark on the front
Wow.
porch of this old seafood shack. Out in the ocean, you're like, man, I don't know what's gonna happen tomorrow. This is strange.
That's a really, if it wasn't so freaky and like, is the world gonna end? That would actually be really cool.
Yeah, yeah. No, I mean it's that whole season is gonna be one that we talk to our grandkids about. Like, it was just an odd time to be alive, like
Yeah.
I don't know if you remember this, but when you'd go on a walk at night in those early days and you see somebody across the street and you'd be freaked out that they were going to give you COVID from across the street because you had no idea the distance of this
Yeah.
thing, or there was no, it was very odd. It was a very odd time.
It was
But
very eerie and strange. Yeah, during that time, like I said, I work at the grocery store, and when toilet paper and stuff got really
yeah,
scarce, like I would come home from work and it would be, 10:30 at night or whatever, and I'd have a backpack full of toilet paper, and I would be walking around to like different friends' houses and
that's
like
awesome.
dropping them a roll, and like I felt like some weird like drug mule or something, just
You're the,
cover of night dropping off toilet paper and
you're the Johnny Appleseed of toilet paper.
exactly. Definitely a
Plunger,
wild time.
plunger in your hand, and just kind of,
Yeah.
that's
Like
awesome.
looking like some weird like B slasher movie killer with a roll of toilet paper and a plunger in one hand.
Yeah,
And
yeah. It was odd, man. But that was the funny thing that everybody went for. I mean, I get it, but it's an odd It's an odd time.
Very
So
odd time.
yeah, so we used to do that for St. Patrick's Day, and then we started doing the Chicago thing again, and just started doing some shows every year. It's a
Yeah.
consistent thing. Been a
Yeah,
lot of
that's
fun.
sounds great.
Yeah.
Well, one thing that I wanted to ask you about actually was I was lurking the Instagram, as I do for these things, and I wanted to ask you about the Beer Olympics in Atlanta last year at the Masquerade.
Yeah.
That popped up on there, and I thought, I mean, I just A, that just sounds incredible, but B, I used to I used to live down the street from that venue, and I would walk there all the time.
Okay.
It's an amazing, amazing venue. Anybody that hasn't, heard of it or seen it, look it up. I'll post some pictures or something. But so what exactly were the Beer Olympics?
Sure. So it's actually something that was happening a lot in the 90s. There's a band called the Anti-Heroes from Atlanta that used to throw their own
Yeah.
festival every year, and they were the ones that threw it. And then we always remember, like, we were big fans. There's a band in your area, in LA area, called The Deal. They were kind of like an Oi punk and roll band from back
Okay.
in the early 2000s. We were buddies with them, and they were always talking about wanting to go and play this festival called Beer Olympics. And there's a famous story of Beer Olympics where, because like I'm not sure if the one you're referring to, because you're talking about the Masquerade, the venue it's at.
Yeah.
The original Masquerade, which we used to play all the time, was a Civil War era factory building, but they actually moved it to the new location. So I don't know how long ago was it that you lived there?
This was about, oh shit, this was like 2010 or so that I was
Okay.
that I was living out there, but it was still at the old
Yeah, that
Civil
was such a great
War.
place.
Yeah, with
Oh,
the
man.
upstairs and the downstairs
Sure,
and
sure. It was
wild venue.
totally. It was a great place, man. We would play there all the time. We played shows there with, like, man, so many different kind of bands over the years, and I miss that venue a lot because it was such an experience to go there.
Yeah.
I think the building got condemned or it wasn't safe anymore, and they had to move it. So the new one is actually downtown in the center of the city, and it's kind of cool too. Like,
Damn.
yeah, so it's not the same original venue.
I didn't know it. I didn't know it had moved. That sucks.
Yeah, so the new one is actually in this indoor street thing, and then the different storefronts are different venues. So there's like
Oh,
three or four
cool.
different venue rooms, and it was cool. We were playing this year with like Lower Class Brats.
Nice.
I think it was Lower Class Brats and us, and then Negative Approach was headlining the night we played. Which I love Negative Approach. They're just,
Mhm.
if there's any band, if you ever want to get angry and just feel righteous in your anger, it's Negative Approach is the band for you. Like, you're just like, yes, yes, this is, there's, because you run into bands that are authentically angry, and then you run into bands that try to be angry. And
Yeah.
when you find an authentic one that you really believe, there was an old band from the East Coast called the Wretched Ones years ago, and they just hated their world. Like, they just hated life. They were all working class guys that worked these factory jobs that they hated, and then they'd play music on the weekends, and you're just like, I believe you. Like,
Yeah.
it's authentic. You know what I mean? And I think that's the thing. Like, when you play punk rock for so long, you start to be like, I just want something that's authentic
Hmm.
and something that's coming from a real place. And I think that's how it is for everybody. But Beer Olympics was great. We went down. There's a band called the Antagonizers, and their singer has been friends of ours for years. And he hit us up and said, "Hey, would you come down? We're redoing the Beer Olympics. We're gonna throw a big fest and get all these punk and hardcore bands together and just have a good time." So
Yeah.
it was a great thing to be a part of. Yeah, we're actually going up to Montreal for another kind of Oi Fest in, I want to say it's April up there. So that'll be cool for that.
Okay.
So we just, I mean, our early roots were playing a lot of that working class punk rock vibe stuff for a long
Mhm.
time. So it was kind of a part of our early years. And we've been kind of revisiting a lot of that stuff with our new material. It's kind of just getting back to the roots and playing that hard driving,
Yeah.
stuff,
Yeah.
So,
No, that's great. No,
yeah.
that sounds awesome. Well, beyond the Beer Olympics last year, what stands out from last year to you?
Well, let's see here.
Was there a favorite show, a favorite tour?
Yeah. No, that's a good question. We had a tour that we were supposed to go up in Canada, and we rescheduled it to be just in the States. And it was kind of a bummer the way the situation worked, because it was kind of a last minute reschedule. A lot of venues
Mm.
we had to switch them up last minute, and we took our friends out from Chicago, the Criminal Kids, and it was a good tour and it was really fun. There was an event that happened though. We went out on the tour, and we have an old friend named Warren, who's from the East Coast, and he was like, "Hey man, I want to do merch for you." And Warren was Johnny Ramone's guitar tech for like 18 years. So
Wow.
when it comes to like experiences, Warren is an amazing character to talk to.
Yeah, I would imagine.
And so And he was somebody we were kind of bummed at how like the venues had to be switched and changed. And he was just an absolute like he's like, man, let's do this. Let's just he was just really positive and good. And I think the whole trip we got to Brooklyn and played a show in Brooklyn. And he said, hey guys, I want to introduce you to a friend of mine. He's gonna come out to the show tonight. And we're like, okay. And he walks in and with his buddy who's probably, right around his age, maybe a little older. And he said, hey, I want to introduce you to my friend. If you guys, after your sound check, come on down and talk to me. And we came down and he introduced us to the original manager for the Ramones, the guy who had been there from day one all the way through their career. Monty is his name. He wrote he's got the most prolific book on the Ramones that's ever been written.
Wow.
And he's like, hey, you guys want to get some food? Let's go out. And I'm like, this whole tour just turned into an absolute like pinnacle moment for my life and career to be able to sit down with this guy and have him tell you stories about the first show where Joey Ramone played drums and didn't sing, and he tells this whole thing. He was a really sweet man. It was kind of just one of those moments. It was like, man, you know what? This whole tour, it just got that much better, it was a good tour. It was fun. The shows were great. And it wasn't fun, but so I think that's one of those like punk rock. I'll never forget this because the Ramones were one of those bands for me.
Yeah.
That I always was like, every punk band, the Clash, all the English bands, they all have their place.
Right.
But when it comes to just pure authentic dysfunction and authenticity, you can't beat the Ramones when it comes to like just who they were as people and the constant like beating the pavement, touring constantly, never getting their dues the way they deserved them.
Yeah.
Opening up for bands like Metallica who loved them, but having the crowd boo them. It's just like that. As a band that's toured and played and paid my dues so many freaking times, you just kind of have those bands where you're like, man, I need your story, guys. Thank you for doing what you did. And so to meet their manager and hear about what their experiences were, it was as being a history buff too. I'm just like,
oh yeah.
So that was really neat.
Yeah, that's absolutely incredible. I mean, I can't even imagine just sitting at the same table with that guy.
Yeah. Oh, we sat there for about 2 hours.
Damn.
Before we had to go back, and he's a very quiet, chill guy. You had to be in, but then he busts out these stories that you're just like, oh my gosh, like I have so many stories from my time, wild stuff I've seen, but man, this is another level. Like, first of all, it's double the time I ever played. They were around forever, and then just being the guy that held such a dysfunctional ship together as the Ramones at times were, it was a really neat thing. And you could tell why. He was very much just a good guy that knew how to, keep things rolling. So definitely cool. If you ever get a chance, Monty's his first name. I can't pull off his last name, but there's a book on the Ramones. I think it's In the Van with the Ramones, I think is the book.
Okay.
And he didn't have copies of the book for us, but he brought these little bookmarks and brought them out to the show to give to us. And
rad.
He signed them all, and it was just nice, It's good stuff. So
yeah, that's super cool.
So I think that stands out to me the most last year for sure.
Oh, sure.
One of the most memorable experiences was that really fun experience. So
yeah, I could definitely see how that would be pretty high up there, even not just for last year, but for the career.
Yeah, no, it's like, that's how it works. Like, I mean, I'm sure you've talked to enough bands. I mean, your whole show the premise of it is hearing stories from the road, right? And when you do this for so long, and it's funny that like we've been around for 25 years, but we're kind of young in the world. Like the punk rock scene's full of dinosaurs, bands that never quit. Right. And that's the best part of it. You can literally go play a show with your heroes and they're still rocking it out, going at it because it's a life experience for them. It's their life. It's not a trend for them.
Right.
And so we're really not that old in the span of punk rock years, but in the span of band years we are. And so it's this weird thing. And so you go through these seasons where you're doing really well and everything's popping, new records out, and then you kind of ride that for a while, and then it kind of dives back down, and you have to kind of rebuild or live a little bit of life. Because one of the hardest parts about being in a band is you're on the road so much that your lyrics start to suck because you're not living life like everybody else. You can't relate to regular life.
Interesting. I guess I never really thought about it that way, how your lyrics would start to kind of diminish with that.
Yeah.
Weird. Well, I just never thought about that. I mean, I don't write lyrics. I'm just a bassist. So,
sure.
It's not something I really think about, but that's That's a really interesting
Well,
thing to
for
notice.
lyricists, I mean, bands
Yeah.
do their thing. It probably doesn't affect every band member, but you'll always notice like if there's a band that blows up, they do really well, and then their second album is trash after they get this big release because all their experiences have been just slamming it out on the road, not
Yeah.
being able to live regular life and relate to everybody. And tour life is awesome,
Hmm.
but it's basically you become a dopamine addict because your entire world is just one dopamine high after another. That's what being on stage is.
Right.
So if you don't add alcohol or drugs to that, that's enough to make you depressed when you come home. Add drugs and alcohol and whatever else to that, and you're an absolute basket case. So like, and that's why like a lot of the older bands they've quit all of that stuff and they're just doing their thing. And some guys do fine with it. They don't even need to. They just keep writing songs that are relevant. But
Yeah.
for me, I always need to come back to my neighborhood and live life with everybody else and come back to the place where everybody just doesn't care if you're in a band. They're just trying to survive. So
Yeah.
it's
Yeah,
that
no,
kind of.
that makes a lot of sense. And it's kind of funny, yeah, to go back home where nobody cares that you're in a band anymore.
Yeah, yeah. It's like, oh, you're just, I mean, they do, but it's not,
Yeah.
it's so far out of the reach of their world. Like, it depends on where you're from, too. So, like, for
Yeah.
us, we're from the South Side, which is the uncelebrated side of Chicago, really. There's an old phrase, culture ends south of 55 or south of 55, and it's the place where all the factory workers and immigrants live. So, it's the neighborhoods. And
Yeah.
you have to sing songs about the characters here
Hmm.
and just the survival mentality because it's just a different experience. So it's a beautiful experience of its own, but
Yeah.
a lot of people don't have the availability to kind of get out and move around as
Hmm.
much. So
Yeah, I get it.
privilege.
Well, now that it's, like you said earlier, it's officially been 25 years of Flatfoot 56. Is there any big special anniversary plans for this year? Big tour, album?
Sure. We are notoriously slow when it comes to putting records out. Our last full length was 2017. So we're
Okay.
going too long. I mean, we've put out two EPs since then and singles, but we haven't done a full album. So for the last probably about 9-10 months, we've been working on a new record.
Okay.
We're about 11 or 12 songs in, piecing it out. Our drummer just had a baby 2 weeks ago, so
Ah,
that
congrats.
it's super. I'm excited for him. But this last year, he also got married, having a baby. He's in 3 bands. I'm in 2 bands. My bass player's in 3 bands. So like we all have a lot of different things competing for our attention. And then on top of that, we only have one member of our band that doesn't have kids. So and
Okay.
they're all in the below 10 age range. So kind of in this stage of life where we're kind of keeping that boat afloat. So
Hmm.
for the 25-year anniversary, we're hoping to have the record done and out by the end of the summer. I
Okay.
think is the plan, but we don't owe a label anything. We do everything ourselves and
Hmm.
book everything ourselves on our pace. So yeah, we're just making sure it's good. I think you don't want to rush something out that you don't have to rush out.
Yeah, definitely
Um,
not.
we have a really good a few years ago, 2019 or 18, we started basically a supporters group called the Ollie Mob that is about 250 to 300 people that are part of it
Okay.
worldwide. And it's basically a supporters club for the band, but it's way more of like a community rather than just. And I know every band says it's a community. This is
Sure.
like literally a community. Like people will go to each other's funerals and
Oh, wow.
we'll raise money for families that lost their car or what like there'll be a lot of things that we all pull for each other.
Hmm.
We do a gift exchange every winter, every Christmas.
Oh, great.
We're all going to play something called Whirly Ball this afternoon, actually, for our yearly get together. So, like, it's been a really neat thing. And what we realized was all of our fans are similar people,
Hmm.
but they don't know each other, and they need to know each other. So,
Right.
it's our way of connecting all of the people that we've slept on their couches over the years and make them best friends. And we've had people get married, have children through this group. Like,
Wow.
it's a really interesting thing. I've had people get divorced from that marriage. You know what I mean? Like it's like this kind of interesting journey for sure. But so I think that group has helped us kind of keep things rolling. We do a summer barbecue every summer at one of like either my or my brother's house, and then we do meetups around the country as we're touring. So
Rad. And that's Ollie Mob.
the Alley Mob, yeah, it's like a
Okay.
specialized. You jump in. There's a specialized store that they have access to, like of unreleased material or material that's out of print.
Okay.
Specialized merch that they get. They get a percentage off of our entire store all the time.
Interesting.
releases they get before everybody else. It's that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And it's interesting because like anytime our stuff gets bootlegged, they all get on it because they have a vested interest in the quality of our releases.
Yeah, and like the
So
preservation of it.
the preservation, yeah, because they've invested themselves into limited edition stuff. And so when you have people out there, we caught a company a few years ago printing our scarves, which were limited edition releases. We were
Damn.
doing these scarves, and they overprinted our original order, and then they just kept selling them, which basically makes the limited edition number get thrown out
Yeah.
the window. And we're just like, they went after them, like the mob just started harassing these guys, and we didn't tell them to do it. We're just like, what, But they're like, no, dude, this is wrong, And we had one time. We found this music video from this kid in Ireland who had taken one of our songs and said it was his, and he did a whole video for it and everything.
What?
Check out my new release, Shiny Eyes, and he had a whole music video for it and everything. It was kind of like Justin Bieber-esque type kid,
Yeah.
and they were all just like, no, that's not right, So they kind of like they started posting on his feed like, yeah, this is a good song when I heard it 10 years ago when Flatfoot 56 wrote it, like, and it was kind of like this funny thing, and it got settled and it was fine, but it was just kind of one of those funny. It's a wonderful group of very spirited people that have good hearts,
Oh, that's awesome. That's
Yeah.
awesome. Well, over the last 25 years, is there one particular tour that you just can't get out of your head? Or one particular country or something?
No, there's what kind of, let me just ask you this. What kind of stories do you like? Do you like violent stories? Do you like funny stories? Do you like just wild out there? What would you prefer? Like, cause like that's the part where it's kind of like I can get extremely intense when it comes to what we've experienced. I can tell you some really funny interactions we've had. I can mix it up if you'd like. So if there's any of those that sound better to you than another, let me know and I'll pull it from there.
Just keep me guessing. I like it all.
Okay.
I want to hear everything, a little bit of everything.
One of the most profound tours of my life, and there's been a few. I'll tell you about two. In 2006, we were touring across the country with a band called Angel City Outcasts, another one called Born to Lose.
I love Angel City Outcasts.
Dude, yes.
Oh my God.
Phenomenal. Yeah, you remember that? It's a name from the past, right?
Yes.
So they pulled us out when we were young bucks, man. Like we were kids, and they were doing a tour, and they were like, "Hey, let's grab Flatfoot and Born to Lose, and let's just do a bar tour." And all of us were not really extremely well known. We had our areas of strength, and we were doing this tour, and we were probably about halfway done with it, closer to the leading towards the end. And we got a call from our label at the time, Flicker Records, and they were saying, "Hey, Flogging Molly needs an opener in Japan. Can you guys be there in a week?"
Wow.
And a small band that's opening up for them, Go-Go Bordillo, had to cancel.
What?
And I was like, okay, so they're calling us to go in, and Go-Go Bordillo was kind of a newer band at that time.
I love them too. Oh my God.
They're phenomenal.
Yeah.
So we went to the tour and we're like, hey guys, like we're getting about ready to hit the area of the country where we pull a lot of people. Would you guys be cool if we jumped on this really amazing opportunity? And they all just were like, absolutely, go, go, go. That's like a dream offer.
Yeah.
And you guys need to go do that. We will all hate you if you don't. So within a week, we all, it's the first time the band had ever been out of the country. Within a week, we were all on a plane to Japan, heading to play a week-long tour in Japan with Flogging Molly to pretty much sold-out shows. So that's like 1,500 people in Tokyo, 500, 600 here, another 1,000 over here.
Jeez.
And just an amazing, like, we were playing shows to 20 people with the Angels. Yeah, I guess on some nights. Or shows that were just in Washington, D.C. on that tour. We played to each other. That was it.
Wow.
And then we went from that to going in front of these massive crowds and having people show up with posters that they had printed out of us. You know what I mean? Japanese are they're intentional. They're intentional fans. And so that was a really cool one. It gave us a chance. We had played with Flogging Molly before that, but we got closer to them as a result of that tour. It was really funny. We met the Agnostic Front guys for the first time on that tour. My brother, because they were playing across town, and the roadie for Flogging Molly was like, told my brother, he said, "Hey, Agnostic Front's playing across town. You want to go see him?" And Kyle's like, "Yeah."
Hell yeah.
And so they went across, and my brother told an awesome story about Vinny Stigma, the guitar player from Agnostic Front. He's a legend. At the time, there was a big rivalry between Agnostic Front and Slapshot, and he said they're in the back room hanging out because all Americans hang out like in Japan because we all speak the same language. So we would have nights where we'd go to the bar and it'd be the entire crew for Beyonce. We'd be hanging out. We'd all be hanging out because we speak English together. So they're in the back room of Agnostic Front at this other show, and kid walks in. A Japanese kid walks in the back room with a Slapshot shirt on.
Mhm.
And Vinny Stigma, at the time, there was a beef between the Slapshot crew and the Agnostic Front crew, and they didn't like each other. They've settled all that since. But Vinny Stigma stops the conversation, points at the kid, and says, "Give me your shirt. Take it off. Take it off right now." And like this intense New York Italian guy is telling this kid pulls his shirt off and he gives it to him. And in front of this kid, Vinny Stigma rips the shirt in half. And he says, "I hate this man." Like rips it in front of it like, in half. And then he takes his own shirt off and gives it to the kid and says, "You wear this. You only wear this." You know what I mean? That was our first experience. We had many others later on. So that's one that whole tour. We went to a Tokyo Giants game with the Flogging Molly guys. And
Wow.
all these different weird experiences. So that's one. And then another one that was really important to us as a band was 2000, I think it was 9. We got a tour with a band called The Business from England. They're kind of one of those legendary English oi bands. Mickey Fitz is their main singer. We had met him before, and they called him the Godfather of oi. He was considered to be just a very well-respected guy. We had been warned so much about these guys because they were kind of notorious for being scoundrels, and they were all soccer hooligans and had criminal records and like literal, they'd tell stories about walking with shotguns into, whatever.
Yeah.
So we go out on this whirlwind tour with these guys, and we were told, watch out for your girlfriends and your wives if they're on the road with you. Just keep them away from these guys.
Okay.
And we show up in New York City, and the first show is a booze cruise. We're going to get on a small boat and play on this boat with them and us.
Hell yeah.
On a boat that's packed, and we're going to take it out onto the river around the Statue of Liberty and back.
Damn.
And this is where we meet them for the first time, and we gather for the beginning of the tour. And they bring us these teddy bears that they bought at the airport to give to the girls that are on the tour with us. And it was like entering into this. It was like going on tour with your favorite uncles. That's basically the way I would describe it. And the entire tour was an absolute just joy to watch these guys who had really rough pasts, but were just still enjoying playing music. And it was about the music now. A lot of them didn't drink anymore. They weren't doing the stuff they used to. To be able to walk into that scenario and just treat them with the respect and honor that they deserve to us, and watch them just really just enjoy the tour with us. It was a really big, was the downright most violent tour I've ever been on in my life. Not because of them, but because of the crowds that would come out. It's the only tour I've been decked in the face by a crowd person at.
Okay.
There was one night we were in Asbury Park. We were going to play the Asbury Lanes. We were providing the entire back line for them because they flew in from England. Mickey called us up and said, "Hey, we're going to be a little late tonight. I got a few death threats before the show tonight. So we're still going to play. We'll still be there. But just out of precaution, we're just going to show up and play our set, and then we'll bugger out."
Yeah.
I'm just sitting here like, what am I? All right, Mickey, that's great, man. And then they came to Chicago, and it was an absolute bloodbath. People are getting, stabbed,
Wow.
dragged out, and it's just an absolute nightmare the whole show. And they just keep playing, they're doing their thing. And I'm just like, what am I, like, what is happening here? A few years after that, Mickey died and passed away. And
Rest in peace.
yeah, man, it was a hard one. The thing that happened the weekend he died, though, we were playing 2 nights in Chicago with Cox Bar.
Wow. Okay.
It was really cathartic to be playing those shows with those guys when that happened, because they're all sweethearts too, like total cream of the crop people.
Yeah.
Cox Bars, and they knew Mickey well. And so for all of us to kind of play that weekend and pay respects to him off from the mic every night, and just kind of talk about our experiences was it was really helpful. But definitely a guy you miss, because he was 100% authentic the entire time.
Yeah.
I appreciated that tour. So, and there's probably about 15 stories from that one tour that I could tell, but I won't go into them all. So there's a lot of those, been in the middle of a 500 guy bottle fight between Nazis and Sharps.
What?
In Allentown, Pennsylvania. Like, I actually met my ex-wife at that fest, and it was like, what we're at this festival. It's called East Coast Oi Fest, and the Foreskins are playing. and there's a band called Oxblood that's playing right before him. Everyone's excited to see this English band called the Foreskins.
Yeah.
They're about ready to play, and some Nazi walks up to one of the Chicago guys, does a Sieg Heil right in his face. The dude just
Ooh.
the dude just shatters a bottle over his head, and the room splits. And then they just start throwing, like, one of the biggest problems with the fest was that they were serving bottled alcohol.
Yeah,
So a
that's a
bunch of
problem.
like oi punks and skins, like, what are you doing? Like, and then they wouldn't let them out to eat. That was the other thing. You couldn't leave the
Oh,
venue and have reentry,
yeah.
and all they had was pretzels and popcorn all day. So you had these angry, drunk punks and skins all day that were waiting to watch this band that's legendary. First time they'd come to America in a
Right.
long time. Then the Nazis just decided to do their stupid thing, and the room splits, and they just start raining bottles at each other, like just the whole room. And
Wow.
I remember when it started, I was outside talking to somebody. I was like, "Isn't this amazing that this festival has been so peaceful and so sweet?" And then I hear over the loudspeaker the venue promoter like, "Put the bottles down!" Like, like, and like the place is shaking because there's so much stuff, and the Nazis can't throw, so they're hitting the ceiling, and it's raining back down and cutting them all. And
Oh my God.
so the police had to come in with riot shields, full riot gear to break the whole fest up. And the Foreskins
Damn.
didn't play that night. They had to
Ah.
play. They had to play the next day, and, and it was just because the band Oxblood wanted to poke a few people, and they were the band that was ready to play, and they're all New York guys, very
Mhm.
anti-racist, but they decided they were going to do a really dumb thing and play a Screwdriver song. And everyone like, why would you play a song from that
Oh,
band? That's a horrible idea. But
yeah.
they had that all screwed up record that everyone's like, oh, it's not racist. I'm like, no, that's not, that's dumb, you guys.
Hmm.
But yeah, that whole show was just an absolute. And at the same venue, I had other run-ins on that Angels the Outcast tour. I had three Nazis start Sig Heil in the middle of my crowd. I'm like, I lost it on them. I just started
Oh
screaming,
yeah.
and Angel City Outcast and Born to Lose came up on stage behind me as I'm doing this with bats and chains, staring these three
Fuck
guys
yeah.
down, and they were just like, "We're not dealing with this tonight." And so that area was always did a lot of that crap. Like, it was
Hmm.
Allentown is always, well, it used to be, I don't know if it still is, but it used to be a rough town for some of those sketchy creeps. They'd come out,
Yeah.
but yeah, there's a lot of them.
I just want to cycle back to the Nazis real quick and make a
Yeah,
real
yeah,
quick PSA that anytime anybody listening sees a Nazi, you punch them in the face.
yeah, yeah. You
That's
don't
the
put up with it.
only acceptable response when you see a Nazi. Punch
You don't
them
want
right in the face.
you don't want to be dealing with that stuff. It's we had I had friends that were at that show that were Jewish. Like,
Yeah.
I'm just sitting here like, I don't want. And these guys were huge too. Like, the one, I'm just like, man, like, I don't want it. Don't, what, dude? That's like, this is the worst thing ever. So I was
Yeah.
expecting to get a bottle over the back of my head. After I got done yelling at them at the crowd, just losing my mind. And their ringleader came up to me at the end of the night and apologized for the actions of his guys. And I'm like,
Wow.
this is weird. And then I heard he ended up leaving their whole crew because he was having second thoughts about the entire thing he was a part of. I didn't know him real well. I
Yeah.
was I was like, dude, well, thanks for your apology, I guess, but
Yeah.
probably stop hanging out with this crap. Like, this is not cool.
Hmm.
But anyway, yeah, it's yeah, those were more violent days back in the early 2000s. Chicago itself, not so much a Nazi problem, but it had a real violence problem. I
Hmm.
think the whole punk scene was dealing with it a little bit across the country, more
Yeah.
so than it does now. I think everybody kind of grew up more, and
Yeah.
which is good. And I think, it's not cool to see people getting stabbed at shows or whatever.
No.
It's not
No,
not
not at
ideal.
all.
Not what it's about.
No, it's definitely not about that at all.
Yeah.
Well, so I'm a tall cat too. I'm
Oh yeah.
standing at about 6'4".
Okay.
You're a fair bit taller though.
A little
What
bit.
what unique challenges do you face on the road with being so tall?
Um, every single night, the sound guy thinks he's got the first idea ever, and he's gonna play a joke, and he's gonna set the mic, to 10 feet, and then be like, oh, and just to kind of be a jerk, and
Yeah.
and I get it, I laugh along, and it's just kind of annoying. I think flying is probably the hardest. Flying's hard. We've done a lot of international travel.
Hmm.
A long time ago, we used to tour Russia all the time and Ukraine,
Oh
so
wow.
before the war started and everything. And so I looked at a video that's actually on our Instagram account, of a show we played in Kiev. It hit me. It was right at the beginning of the war. I was kind of mourning the whole thing,
Hmm.
and it hit me. It was like probably the first year in. and it hit me that most of those guys in that room were either dead or fighting for their life. And that,
Wow.
like, you're just like, you're like, what, like, Wiz, like,
Yeah.
like that you saw the crowd, the video of
Hmm.
the guys just rocking out, and like these guys would all be war age, they'd all be fighting, like,
Yeah.
or this is just mind numbing. Like, wow, what,
Yeah.
so you
It's
never
hard to
dream
wrap
that
your
when
head
you're,
around.
yeah, you're just like, it's a strange feeling. It's a very
Yeah.
strange feeling, but I hope it gets figured out. So,
Yeah. Fingers crossed.
but yeah,
Fingers
fingers
crossed.
crossed. There's a lot of flying that goes into those trips,
Yeah.
obviously, and just kind of cramming yourself into an airplane seat for a 6'10" dude is pretty rough, especially when you're like
Yeah.
sick. You
Ooh.
know, when you're sick, it's kind of a rough go. So that's probably the biggest challenge I find. Some countries are not built for big people.
Hmm.
Japan, for example, is not at all built for somebody my size. So,
Yeah.
and this is a weird thing, but like, imagine your entire life, every chair, your knees being above your waist,
Yeah.
and the impact that has on your back and your hips. Like, so
That's not good.
there's just, the world's not built for a guy my size, and
Hmm.
I'm not wealthy enough to build my own house or anything. But Flatfoot, three of us are the original Flatfoot was four guys, and three of us were brothers,
Hmm.
and the other two guys are both 6'6". So like,
Oh, wow. You're all tall.
yeah, the drummer, our original drummer, my brother, he's not with us since 2014. He's out in Seattle, but my brother, original drummer for Flatfoot, the one that left in 2014, went and got his engineering degree, and he worked for Blue Origin. So he worked on
Wow.
the rock. He's a rocket engineer, literally space rocket scientist.
Holy shit.
And so he was telling me, because he really missed touring. He didn't. He and his wife both helped run this band, and they were huge in it. He said he laughed one day because one of the guys he was working with was like, "I'm really excited. I'm going on a vacation to Cleveland. I've never been to Cleveland. This is amazing." And everyone's like, "Ooh, ah." And my brother is just like laughing, and they're like, "Bawinkle, you ever been to Cleveland?" He's like, "Only about a half dozen times." You know what I mean? Like, and he just realized that the amount of life that he had lived because he played music and toured was so rich. Like, just,
Yeah.
do you want to be a person that has a great retirement plan where you can go out and experience the world when you have arthritis, or do you want to get out and experience the world when you're at your peak in your prime and have those stories for the rest of your life?
Right.
And that's the question. But yeah, it definitely, we can't beat those experiences.
No.
So, and you realize that that's a great quote from Mark Twain. The enemy of ignorance is the ultimate enemy of hate and indifference is travel.
Yeah.
It's like it kills all hate, ignorance, racism, and indifference, because you realize that
Absolutely.
people are the same everywhere. Like, yeah. So my brother Kyle and I, the bass player, and I, we have three original members in the band now. Josh, our bagpiper, he's a bit shorter. It's yeah. So we're always a kind of a force to be reckoned with. I think it's kept us out of a lot of trouble.
Yeah.
Nobody wants to jump the dudes that are monsters, like,
I'm sure. Yeah.
yeah. But I'm sure you've run into this when you're a big person. You also start realizing, hey, in a fight, I'm gonna be seen as the aggressor. So, or
Uh-huh.
I could really do some damage if I were to like fully let go and
Right.
fight somebody. So you learn, and I've always talked about this, like, you learn how to conduct yourself like you will never get away with anything. You'll
Right.
always be remembered
Hmm.
as that big dude. And so that rules your entire life. Your entire ethos becomes, I will always be seen as Goliath in the David and Goliath story.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And so you tend to really become laid back if you can.
Hmm.
Um, so
Yeah, I've noticed that. Like it seems like a lot of bigger, taller dudes are usually pretty laid back.
mhm. Yeah, we years ago we were going to start a band because there's a bunch of guys in different bands that are massive.
Hmm.
Marty from the Lower Class Brats, Johnny from Cheap Sex, all these different band members, and we were gonna do a band. We were gonna get a big dudes punk band,
Hell
and
yeah.
get the largest dudes we could find, and then get the smallest front man we could find. We were gonna call it Lurch and the U-Rangs, and
Yes.
have just the tiniest, most aggressive singer we could find, and it was always a joke we all would make together, and it never turned into anything. But maybe
Hmm.
a Halloween show, would be
Yeah.
kind of neat. But
Yeah, like a one-off Halloween show. That'd be super
yeah, yeah.
awesome. Be
Because
super awesome.
there's a lot of big guys in the scene too. There's a lot of guys that are just massive, you know.
Yeah. So there was another thing I wanted to ask you actually.
Yeah.
What was it like having not just one, but three songs on Sons of Anarchy? I mean, how did that even come about?
Yeah, so at that time we were on Old Shoe Records, I believe it was. Yeah. Great label out of Southern California. The
Hmm.
guy who owned that label used to run the Slide Bar in Fullerton.
Okay.
And he now runs Punk in the Park, which is a huge festival. It's taking
Really?
yeah, so
I go to that.
do you?
I didn't know there was the connection.
Yeah,
Awesome.
we're actually playing the Denver one this year. I don't know if I'm supposed to
Nice.
say that, but by the time this comes out, it might be okay. Yeah, so he was running the label. We were on Warped Tour that year. There was a lot of push. Like we had done some songs for the WWE for some wrestlers. They had
Hmm.
us do a song for Sheamus, and I think we did one for Johnny Curtis, who would become a different character later on or stuff or whatever.
Okay.
So we were getting a lot of those opportunities, and we had a manager named Christian Picciolini from Chicago who was just killing it. He used to play in a band, Random 55, they were called. Joan Jett used to manage him,
Nice.
and he's like, I'd love to manage you guys. And a wonderful human being to this day, a wonderful, wonderful guy. He's got a crazy story and just a wonderful human being. And so he was really killing it. So that's what happened when it came to that. He had some connections with movie and TV,
Hmm.
and we got hit up with being on that. And that was by far, I think, the biggest placement we'd ever received as a band. We had some other really cool ones over the years that we were part of, but Sons of Anarchy having an outro Sons of Anarchy,
Yeah.
scene. They did, I think it was season 3 where they were all in Ireland for most of the season. I
Yeah,
think
yeah,
that's what
yeah.
they were looking for Celtic punk music, and the Celtic punk scene's interesting. There's obviously Flogging and Dropkick the Big Two,
Hmm.
and we had a lot of opportunities that would come our way, but there would be kind of a lot of competition for that stuff. So we lost a few cool opportunities because there was just bigger fish that jumped in and said, "Hey, we'll take
Yeah.
it. We want it." Fair enough, it's business.
Sure.
But yeah, Sons of Anarchy was interesting. I never watched the show. Like I
Okay.
obviously knew what it was, but I wasn't a fan of it or anything. And so I had to watch the show and find out. It was kind of funny the first song because they used 6 songs of ours throughout the course of that season, and some of them were major features and other ones were on radios in the backdrop. The
Okay.
first
Okay.
our network TV debut of of anything was actually at the tail end of a sex scene. They played one of our songs on the radio in the background, and we're just like, I think that's Son of Shame. That's Son of Shame. Whoa, we're on TV, and
Yeah.
and he gets a call, and it's in the background. It's just kind of funny, but it was a great experience. And the cool thing about that is it gets syndicated, so royalties
Yeah.
keep happening every time another country picks it up and changes the language on it. So it's kind of neat to be immortalized within that well
Right.
received show. Yeah, so the Celtic music thing, I think at that time, the like 2000 early teens, was
Hmm.
probably the height of when it was really banging and doing really well, and then it kind of had more of its decline. It's still doing well, but ska kind of came back, started doing its
Hmm.
thing, and people started going elsewhere. The cool thing about Celtic punk is it's ethnic, so it's never gonna leave certain people.
Right.
It's not a style that you get into. It's your life. It's who you are.
Exactly.
So what's been neat lately is we're seeing a lot of traditional Irish bands coming out of Ireland again, and younger
Okay.
people are playing it. So there's a phenomenal band called the Mary Wallopers that's
That's a great name.
incredible. If you get a chance to see them play, or they're all awesome. It's just an awesome band, and they're kind of a mix between the old Chieftains. If you took like actually the Dubliners, and mixed it with the Pogues, you'd get these guys. So you
Rad.
you
Okay.
get really good quality trad music with kind of a punk edge to it as well. So, and it's neat to see Ireland take that music style back, because for a long
Sure.
time America kind of we ran with the punk rock thing,
Hmm.
and Ireland now is just kind of embracing their own history and culture
Yeah, that's
in
great.
that area. So
That's awesome.
yeah,
Yeah, just a sidebar actually. The Sons of Anarchy was it was the first time I had heard you guys.
oh cool,
I was a big fan of the show, and I think it was actually the very first time I was watching a TV show and pulled out my phone to look up what I was listening to.
Oh,
because
heck yeah.
I was like, what is this? I gotta know what this is.
Oh,
And it was We Grow Stronger.
yeah.
Yeah, I mean that whole album, Blackthorn, was, man, that just, when that came out, that just hit me. And
Cool.
yeah, it's just been always been one of my favorites. So
It's one of
just
my favorite records too. It
yeah.
definitely we were on Warped Tour when that came out.
Okay.
It was I think the pre this the like the first week sales of that were huge. Like for the time it was like
Hmm.
did really, really well, and it was perfect. So we were getting calls from like Fat Records and Side One
Nice.
Dummy and all these bigger labels. And then what happened was the label, who was kind of more an indie label, didn't know how to report SoundScan numbers, so they didn't report anything after the opening week, and
What?
so our sales just disappeared. And everyone was like, "Well, this is a
Oh,
1 week thing."
fuck.
And so we kind of got screwed in that situation. It wasn't an intentional thing. It was more of a, hey, we're just dealing with this really big album that we don't really know how to handle.
Yeah.
So it was fair enough, and it was kind of a learning experience for us all. But it was a great record. I still love it. We got our rights back for the record, so we own the whole thing now
Okay.
and can put it out whenever we want to. I think the cost of putting records out is so much that as a band, if you're doing everything financially yourself, it's really hard to keep everything in stock and constantly
Mm,
pressed. And so we save up our money to put out the next record,
yeah.
and then maybe we'll do a repressing. It's just hard, you know. So
Yeah, no, I get it. And that actually kind of leads into one of my other questions was, I was going to ask if Blackthorn was going to get a repressing, because
mhm.
I was lurking around the website and saw that it was sold out. And I was like, fuck, I need that
Yeah.
one. I need that one in my collection.
Well, there's a flip side to that, and so and different bands have different philosophies with this. My brother is a part of a really well known within their world Spanish oi band that world deals with the foreign language oi world is kind of its own very niche collector's cult of
Okay.
like they're really into limited edition releases, exclusivity at all costs,
Yeah.
make sure that when people get something, it has high value because it's not massively produced. And so we've been kind of trying to be a little bit more like, okay, let's gauge the value of our stuff so that the value doesn't get lost in mass production.
Hmm.
You can be a band that goes after reaching the whole world and being the biggest thing in the world, or you can be a band that says, you know what, we want to be a band that matters the world to the people that do follow us
Yeah.
and considers them with everything. And we kind of found ourselves in that boat just because we weren't getting the breaks. This happens to a lot of Midwest bands. Like we all have a tendency to be weekend warrior types where we work and then we travel, and
Hmm.
there's not as much. We have Riot Fest, which we were a part of the early days of Riot Fest, and
Yeah.
all that stuff, but it's not, we'll talk about this bands, like fellow bands that from Chicago that are kind of that do well but never left Chicago, like
Hmm.
Rise Against moved and stuff, and that's
Yeah.
why they blew up because they moved to LA, and some of them still
There you
stayed. And
go.
so for the bands that don't move, it becomes you kind of become a part of the really cool history of Chicago punk rock
Hmm.
and very rich history. Like it's got its own sound, it's got its own community and culture. It's very much not like the coast at all. It's its own
It's its own
sound.
ecosystem.
It is. You got bands, incredible bands like the Smoking Popes or Naked Raygun, or these bands that inspired tons of band. Like when the Foo Fighters come out and say Naked Raygun inspired us to play, you're like, that's awesome, and we know those guys. They're great.
Yeah.
I mean, the ones that are still around. You just kind of you appreciate the value. 88 Fingers Louie, or just the different bands that really made your scene thrive at different seasons in the punk rock history.
Hmm.
So yeah, for us, yes, to get to. I'm sorry, I should answer your question. We will release it again and print it again when my credit card can get down below the maxed out portion. I can put it on there and we can start paying that off.
Well, I look forward to it.
Would you like the gatefold or would you like just the standard? Because the gatefold was pretty cool. We did a
Oh,
gatefold for it.
gatefold. Yeah.
Yeah, let's see if we
Gatefold.
can.
Way cooler.
I think. Well, that was a 2010 record.
Yes.
So this is the 15-year anniversary. 15's a little weird.
15 is a little weird.
Yeah, maybe we should do 20.
Yeah.
Maybe 2030 if we're. I think we'll still be kicking. We miss our anniversaries a lot too, which is unfortunate. Next year is the anniversary, the 20-year anniversary for Jungle of the Midwest Sea, which is the record that a lot of our fans started on with us.
Okay.
But Sony owns that, and they'll charge us $17 on top of the cost of printing things. So it's
What?
almost impossible to like, they're like, yeah, you have to pay the royalty to us up front if you want to repress the album. And we're like,
Oh,
this is rough. Like, by the time we're
yeah.
done pressing this thing, it's going to be about $23 to press it. And it's like, at that point, you're like, all right, guys, $50, I guess, like, or whatever. I don't know. Like,
Yeah.
that's not fair. No, what's funny is we had to convince the label to put out vinyl for that record because it was during the era when
Really?
CDs were still the thing. And they were like, only hip hop artists do vinyl. And we're like, shut up, do what we tell you to do.
Yeah.
You'll thank us in the future. And then every album they did after that was vinyl. And we told you guys.
Yeah, of course.
It's the subculture. It's the folk communities, the folk cultures, the subcultures that actually define what pop culture is going to be for tomorrow.
Mhm.
So listen and pay close attention to those underground styles because they're going to be defining tomorrow if they don't implode on themselves.
Yeah, that definitely makes sense. Well, Tobin, I think we kind of covered what's up next on the musical horizon with your shows and stuff coming up this year. We've got you said some Coffin Cats dates.
Yeah,
In April. You've got some good
Great
stuff
guys.
in March.
So look for some stuff this summer as well. Like I said, we'll be playing in Colorado for one of the Punk in the Park events.
Hell yeah.
And doing some other things as well. So we'll be playing. We're around.
Cool.
Again, we're dealing with a new baby, so we want to make sure our drummers can take family first. You got to take care of your family.
Absolutely.
You can't avoid them. They deserve their dads. So
yeah,
it's just playing that balance, trying to be good people and
Mm-hmm.
put good music out. It's an important thing.
Yeah. Well, why don't you plug the socials real quick so everybody
Sure.
knows where to listen and watch?
Yeah, our Instagram account, Flatfoot56 on Instagram. Follow us, please. We need to keep that going. Sign up for our mail order, our email list. We have a great, I know this is a little old school, but the email list is still the cash is king statement for bands.
Yeah.
We do send out a monthly newsletter. That's pretty awesome. And so flat56.com is our website. Facebook, we're still on there. Instagram, we're on there. We didn't do the TikTok thing because we're not necessarily video friendly faces. We're kind of a little old for that. But Instagram, I think, is the best spot to check us out at. And then obviously listen to us on Spotify and YouTube as well. Has a bunch of great stuff. So follow us on it all. We'd love to keep up with you. And thanks you so much for having me on your show, man.
Of course, man. Well, hot damn, everyone. That was Tobin from Flatfoot 56. What a most excellent ride that was. Thank you so much for sitting down with me today, man, and sharing some strange. It was an absolute delight having you here.
Thanks so much for having me. I appreciate it.
Of course, man. Happy St. Patty's to you, everyone else.
Absolutely.
Don't drink and drive. We've got the rideshare apps and stuff. There's no need for anybody to drink and drive anymore.
Be safe.
Be safe. Get home to your families, and stay tuned for more strange and unusual true tales from tour. Thanks for listening to the Hesh Files. Catch you on the flip side.